Hello and welcome everybody to AI and Your Career, how to prepare for the changing job landscape. My name is Dakota Nunley and I lead content strategy here at Udacity. And today I'm very excited to facilitate the conversation between two experts who bring firsthand experience working in and around all things AI, Milica Cvetkovic and Karen Habel. Milica, Karen, thanks so much for joining me today.
No, thank you for having us.
All right, Milica, I'd love to start with you to kick things off. Would you mind telling us about your current role and what that means week over week?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an AI consultant with AI services with professional services organization within Google Cloud. What I do on a daily basis, I lead teams to build AI systems, production-ready AI systems for Google Cloud customers. I work on various projects ranging from kind of traditional machine learning AI to nowadays more generative AI. But the focus there is really on building scalable production-ready systems. In addition to that, I do work on some educational efforts as well, both within organization and outside. Overall, various involvements on how to build these scalable production-ready AI systems. In terms of how my week to week looks like, it really depends on the type of project that I'm working on. I work directly with external Google Cloud customers. So that can mean anything and everything, really from, meeting with stakeholders to my specialization from graduate school was how do we teach a non-technical audience, very technical content, such as some technical machine learning, more advanced machine learning. And so what I really love doing is taking these concepts, extremely technical concepts, and then translating them into business value, into how do we provide, how do we keep advancing, how do we solve problems, and really translating that into a language that anyone can relate to and anyone can understand, especially non-technical audience of any kind. So that is also where my passion is. I love doing that, and I love trying to really kind of boil down the highly technical concepts into a non-technical. So that is most of my work. And then I work closely with engineers as well on architecting the solution, on working with product, on incorporating any kind of innovations into solutions, and really making that system scalable to any platform and any audience.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that. And I'm curious, how did you end up working in the space?
Great question. So I actually had a somewhat non-traditional path here. I have my bachelor's degree in math. And after that, I started working in educational publishing. I was a curriculum designer for about 5 years. In the meantime, I also did all kinds of other things. I worked in service industry for a while. I love service industry. I was a bartender for a minute. Absolutely loved that. And then I decided to go back to graduate school at some point. And I went back to graduate school for statistics. I got my master's in statistics. In graduate school, during graduate school, I kind of reached out to every professor in graduate school to try to find projects that really fit me. And I found my place in biomedical informatics lab. I went to grad school at University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I worked with a professor there called Tony Gitter in biomedical informatics. And we started working on designing this workshop for how to teach machine learning to computational biologists. So how do you teach machine learning to someone so that they can apply it in their everyday work, even though they are not maybe computer scientists or statisticians by training, but they can still read journals and use these innovations in various fields in their day-to-day world. So that's how I kind of got connected and into machine learning from traditional statistics. And I was going to school in parallel with working a full-time job. So I was in graduate school while working a full-time job still. So that was a little bit different as well. I was a 5 years post the bachelor's degree. I was by far one of the oldest in my class in grad school. So a little bit untraditional student altogether there. And then after graduate school, actually in the middle, I started also doing internship with this biotech startup. I was an engineer for several years there. And I decided that at some point, I kept teaching machine learning even after graduate school. And I decided at some point that my soft skills are not maybe being utilized the way I wish for them to be. And I decided to go into a role that is going to let me combine both technical and non-technical. And that's how I ended up at Google. And right now I'm an AI consultant where I combine kind of technical background with non-technical. So a little bit non-traditional in that sense as well.
Great, thank you. And Karen, I'd love for you to share the same on your background and how you ended up here, your current role.
Yeah, sure. So hello everyone, welcome. I'm Karen. I am what's called a technical content developer at Udacity. And in many ways, what I do mirrors kind of what Milica does. So I am part of the content team that builds the classroom content and subject area lessons and courses and nano degrees that we have at Udacity in our catalog. And so what that means is that I spend a lot of time looking at what's happening in the industries, in various industries and tech. I spend a lot of time reading, a lot of time at conferences, a lot of time with developer groups, just trying to think about like what's happening in the space and what do we want to focus on? What do we think is important for folks who are looking to either transition into tech, to maybe take on different roles in tech, and then build curriculum around that. So we spend time identifying those professional practitioners and experts that we want to work with to collaborate with us to build that content and that curriculum. And then I spend a lot of time working with them to actually build that out. So there's a lot of instructional design there, but there's also a lot of like talking about, similar to what Milica said, how do you take something that is very, very complicated and can be, whether it's technical, whether it's conceptual, and break it down into smaller bite-sized pieces that our students are going to be able to rapidly learn with and then go forward and implement with as well. So on short, that's what it looks like. And what I do sometimes varies day to day, depending again on the project. So I may be doing something very technical in the AI space. I may be working in data analytics, doing something with an element of cloud computing with one of the large cloud computing providers. And there's just a real broad diversity there. But basically, I'm building online classrooms for those who are interested in tech.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Karen. Milica, a lot of people here are probably interested in understanding what concrete skills are required to work in AI. Can you talk about what specific skill sets you and your colleagues have? So if your team is hiring, what skill profile you're typically looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love talking this topic. I think that there is sometimes maybe misunderstanding that there is only a single type of role when it comes to working in the AI space, and that is a machine learning engineer or AI engineer nowadays as being rebranded. And that's it. That is the only thing that you can do, and you're pretty limited in that sense. However, the space is much greater than that, and it's growing, and the differentiation is massive. So when I talk about this and when I think about it, I like to think in like different categories. So I always like to talk to people about where they see themselves in terms of the whole kind of like machine learning life cycle or or process. So we have the product itself. So maybe you would like to work on making product, creating product, designing product. And even in that space, there are different roles. But then I actually like to think about this. Okay, let's take another step kind of backwards, and like, where does all begin? And probably all would begin with like what I like to call researcher. So there's going to be a person, group of people, whatever, that are really deep into kind of like a theory, very traditional, like PhDs mostly. Doesn't have to be, but mainly like researchers who are starting some kind of, let's say, a technology with whatever they're coming up with. And then there's going to be product, where we're going to take now this innovation, take this research, and try to actually apply it in a real world by creating some product around it. And so you can think of that as various components of, for example, in Google Cloud, or various clouds, various components of clouds, like Vertex AI, for example, and like how we can incorporate AI into that, right? So you have a product, and you have both technical and non-technical people. So you're going to have roles like program managers that are going to manage the whole program. You're going to have product managers that are actually going to come up with your everything from like market strategy to like going from 0 users to 1 million users. Then you're going to have your engineers as well, that can vary anywhere from like a very traditional computer science background to more of like a statistics background. And I also like to say, sometimes people are like, oh, but then I have to have these hundreds of degrees, and what do I need to do, and all this. Actually, I know quite a lot of people that have come from a non-traditional background. So it's not necessarily nowadays that you must have various degrees to work in a field. You really don't. There's so much opportunity for upskilling outside of traditional academic settings nowadays. And with the internet, and the opportunity is literally endless. And we can even see with some collaboration here with Udacity that opportunities really are endless. It really is up to you to use all of them. So some of the probably most innovative engineers that I know of that have kind of kept up with all the changes that have been happening in the past year and a half are the ones who are very curious about the space, and they're constantly exploring, playing with, experimenting, and there is nothing to kind of like there is nothing to stop it. There's open source tools, there are programs nowadays, there is everything and anything that you can take that can allow you to do this. So I think that we just need to shift a little bit from that. You must have traditional academic background in order to be part of it. And then, so that is going to be research, product, and then we have also applied, kind of like go-to-market applied space as well. And that is a space where I work in. So when it comes to that, we're now going to take all of this. We're going to take product, we're going to take research, we're going to take all of it. And how can we now use all of these tools that someone created and really put it into use in the real world situation? And even there, we have kind of like 2 streams. We have enterprise work stream, and then we have kind of like individual developers, consumers work, or streams, not work streams, streams, right? So we have enterprise and then consumers that are more like individual users when it comes to actually like putting products into market. And there's so much that you can do, from project management, again, product management, consulting, engineering, various types of engineering that you can do. There are roles that nowadays in sales, pre-sales, that are requiring some AI knowledge and background. We are also seeing a lot of need for AI knowledge and AI education and upskilling on a kind of executive level or leadership level, because nowadays the executives want to apply AI in their organizations, but maybe they don't have enough knowledge how to do this. So it's really a massive umbrella. And I love, when I talk about this, I really love for people to kind of like branch out a little bit from this traditional mindset that you must have a specific academic background, you must be doing only these things, and the only thing that you can be is an engineer. Absolutely wrong. And
Yeah.
I think that the space is growing.
So I want to pick up on what Milica said in terms of what background do you need, right? And I'll talk about what my background is. My background is I have an undergraduate degree in sociology. I was a teacher in elementary school, middle schools, and high schools. I then went on to get an MBA and did corporate finance and was a banker for a number of years, and then an entrepreneur. None of that speaks to tech. But Milica, you said something, curiosity. I got curious. I started hearing about data. What did that mean, data? What did it mean to these concepts that people were talking about? I didn't understand that. And so I got curious and I started exploring. And that led me, yes, to online resources. That led me to Google. That led me to actually Udacity and a number of other resources where I just started to explore because I was starting at base. I didn't know anything about tech. I didn't know any languages. I didn't know any of that kind of stuff. But I was so curious, and over a period, I really just dove in. And I think that's one of the main things that, like, to be in this space, you need to be curious. I work with AI every single day. Now I'm a technical content developer. I develop technical content. That's what I do day in and day out. And I do that because I'm curious and I'm practicing and I'm looking for those opportunities, but I had to start somewhere. So just coming back to this point that, like, not everyone who starts out has a data science background, has a math background, has an engineering background or other tech background, not even coming from STEM. Any background. You can be coming from no post-secondary degree, honestly, for certain things, right? But at the end of the day, it's all about, like, how do you acquire those skills? How do you get conversant so that you can sit in a room with someone like Milica, sit in the room with someone like me or anybody else, and be able to hold your own in this conversation that's all about AI? And it goes beyond just saying, oh, I know ChatGPT, because that's not the curiosity. That's a bit of it, but that's not the curiosity we're talking about, right? We're talking about understanding context, understanding the ecosystem. Because like Milica said, there are so many opportunities, and those opportunities do not all reside in tech. So I was reading some material in preparation for this, and it was really interesting to look at how, this stream of AI and AI careers, it obviously affects education, like where I sit at Udacity. It affects manufacturing. It affects the financial industries. It affects, like, healthcare. Like, it affects creatives. And in fact, there was some information from LinkedIn that noted that for all of their members, there's over 1 billion LinkedIn members. And of all of them, those who have been most active at adding AI-like skills to their profiles would be considered creatives, content developers, artists, graphic artists. I mean, so again, I just say that to say that this field is so broad. But because it's broad, you need to know where to hone your skills. You need to know and find, like, pathways in which to go. And traditionally, those pathways would have been, you go to a college program, you go to some university institution, somewhere, wherever you sit in the world, and you learn it that way. But AI is fast. It's fast. I mean, it's dizzying. It's so fast. In the last year and a half, things have changed and transformed so much in ways that go beyond the hype. At every single element that you look in, whether it's your workspace, your work life, your email, your phone call, anything that you do at this point has something to do with AI. I go to AI conferences all the time, and I will tell you at least 30% of the people who are sitting in that room are non-technical people. But they have ideas and they want to realize them. And they don't know how to realize them, or they want to get into this space and they don't know how to do that. So, again, it's when we talk about AI, it's really broad, but it's really important to remember that, like, again, no matter where you sit in your education stream, no matter where you sit geographically, you have now access to resources so that we can take you from zero to, yes, that technical AI hero, where you are actually implementing, innovating, having conversations. I mean, again, I started out as a teacher, which is an amazing job, by the way, and I still teach, but now I'm teaching a larger crowd. I have a larger base. I'm teaching, not only the folks that I teach through Udacity, but I'm also teaching people in my community. I'm also teaching grant writers how to leverage AI in their work. I'm teaching our school district how to leverage AI for some of the supplemental things they want to do. So again, this is where we want to go with just like understanding where you can take your career. It's all about where you want to take it and then finding those tools to do that.
And I actually want to add one more thing to this is what Karen, a little bit ago, you mentioned something. It doesn't matter which industry you come from. Actually, I think that can be an advantage. So if you're coming from some highly specialized industry or an industry that is dependent on regulatory and compliance standards that are very specific, like healthcare, life sciences, financial industry. So something where regulation is very heavily practiced. So there are certain rules that you must follow. If government, federal contractors, anything similar to that, you add onto that some kind of AI knowledge specialization, whatever it is, you are now not only, you can be your industry expert, so you can be your subject matter expert, act as an industry expert, and have an understanding of AI so that you can actually work side by side with maybe an engineer that is building a product that is very specialized in your field. And that is very necessary when we are working in specialized industries. We work regularly with experts, industry experts, subject matter experts that are providing us that in-depth knowledge. So if you're one of those, let's say you're working in insurance and you have an insurance background, that is highly specialized. I'm trained in mathematics and statistics. I'm not trained in insurance. I've never worked in insurance industry before. So if I'm working on building a AI solution for insurance industry, it is an absolute must to work with someone who does have this in-depth knowledge and background. So I would say also to steer away from thinking, how do I now switch my career completely, transition into some brand new field, but rather how do I use everything that came before me to my advantage so that not only I'm an expert in this new thing that I am specializing in or getting extra education or switching careers, but now I can leverage all of this awesome experience that I have in whichever industry came before it to become a subject matter expert with AI knowledge.
100% agree with that. 100%.
Yeah. Thank you both. That's fascinating stuff. If we dial in on those basic skill sets and competencies, Karen, I'll pass this one to you. For someone who is completely new to AI, what more of those basic skills are valuable in a world of AI?
So I'll say one thing is that at base, you have to be curious. You have to be willing to learn and learn quickly and learn on the fly. That's just base. That's table stakes. But then you go from there to you need to be able to talk the talk. And so what does that mean? It means that you need to be AI literate. If you are coming from a space that is non-technical, you don't really know like you know AI, but you don't really know what that means, really know what the basis of those things. People talk about LLMs, large language models, so you have no idea what that means. Then you need to get literate at that level, because that becomes the basis of everything. You need to understand, like, what is data? What is prompting? This word that gets thrown all over the place. What does that even mean? Which, and essentially means asking questions to a computer to get the output that you want. But that takes a skill. It's not like asking Google and going onto Google search, right? So like, you need to get AI literate, and there are ways and pathways to do that. And at the moment, there are a lot of free ways to do that, one of which is Google Cloud's digital leader program that we have at Udacity. But there are a lot of other ways as well, in addition to that. You need to start to like immerse yourself. So that's the talk is really, again, learning how to sit and talk the talk, learning the vocabulary, learning the nuances. That's some of where you want to go. Once you're there, though, let's say you're someone who maybe has some data science experience or learning. You've been doing a lot of research on your own, and you want to like start like actually doing stuff beyond the prompting. I call that, let's walk the walk. Let's start to implement. Let's start to learn some of those tools. And the wonderful thing that's happening right now across so many providers is that there's so many low code, no code tools. If you are somebody, again, who's not coming from a technical background, but is kind of wanting to inch more into that way. And if you are someone who's in a technical background, but not necessarily AI, there's lots of opportunities to learn. So therefore, you're like experimenting, you're playing, you're kind of creating pet projects, if you will. But then you take that and you don't want to stick in experimentation. You want to go and you want to start to innovate. You want to start to create. You want to start to like operationalize, if you will, the things that you're learning and bring them into your own workflow, whether it's at your own workplace or maybe a new workplace that you're transitioning to. And so that's where you start to get really deep into the like more practitioner level, advanced topics, a lot of which Milica's talked about, right? But I think that's like, there's a step, because not everybody's going to get to that like advanced AI, machine learning, engineer or data scientist stage. And some of that requires some formal learnings around that sometimes. But like to start out, to get to those first two steps, to begin to make this transition, that's what we do here at Udacity. That's our bread and butter. And we try and we hope that we are one of the best at doing that in the field, because that's what we're really trying to do. We're really trying to take you from where you're at, wherever you may be, and get you to where you want to go. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, and if I can add just one thing actually to this, I absolutely love what you just said, Karen, and I think that there is a lot out there, the content that talks about, oh, in order to be able to do this, you need to accomplish these 10 steps and these 10 steps only, and this is how you must start, and unless you know all of these 10 things, and it's copy paste, and all these people are kind of telling you the same thing. This is copy paste material, and this is what you must do, and this is necessary. But I absolutely agree with what Karen just said. Actually, you should probably, the better approach would be pick what you're interested in, whether that's large language models or whatever it is. Pick something that you're really curious in the field, and then start playing around with, and that's how you dive. Actually, you don't have to start with like this basic knowledge where you need to get, I don't know, 17 math courses before you can even understand what a large language model is. You can actually start going right away, playing around with a tool, and then start diving deep. Oh, how does this actually work? Let me try to hack it essentially. What are the things that I need to do to be able to understand this tool? And this tool, because this is what I'm interested in. I don't have to know 17,000 other concepts from math or whatever in order to understand this thing. But these are the things that I do need to understand, and you break it down like that. So take this thing that you're interested in and dive into that and go backwards from it, rather than following this 10-step plan that everybody's copy pasting.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's where that creativity comes in, right? Like you need to, in this space, learn to be creative. And you learn to be creative by diving deep into the thing that you're most curious and interested in. But you, again, like there's so many ways to do that, but there are also some real clear structured, like not academic, to your point, Milica, not academic. Like you don't have to take a million math classes. I never took a million math classes, but like I can get into all these tools and like I have fun with them. And to the extent that like I literally have a 9-year-old who goes to Google events with me and is building like agents, AI agents, doing all sorts of stuff that he's not supposed to be doing, but he's doing it because now he's learned the skill because he's super interested in it. So it's just to say that like sometimes these things that seem so complicated are not actually, if you have a passion, getting back to what you've said, Milica, just like narrowing in on that. And if you don't know what that is, think about what you do know, what you are expert in, and what you do like to do, whether it's a side hobby or whatever, and use that as the catalyst for wanting to learn more.
For sure.
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you both. So we've touched on skills, roles. Now I'd love to dive a little deeper into how professionals can actually build those skills in a way that prepares them to succeed in whether it's AI or AI adjacent fields. Milica, I'll start with you here. How do you keep your skill set current?
Yeah, it's a very fast changing field. So that's the first thing to get acknowledged here. And that FOMO was really real in the past year and a half, that fear of missing out. And then you kind of go online and you see this flood of information and flood of like just people who are saying, oh, I did 17,000 things in a past week and here's what I accomplished. And you're like, well, I didn't. How do I do this and how do I keep up? And a couple of things. There are, I'd say, a couple of approaches that you can take. Definitely pick what you're interested in, number one, because you cannot keep up with everything. You won't be able to keep up with everything industry-wise. You won't be able to keep up with everything. If you're in a specific industry, what is innovation in that industry or what applies to that industry specifically. You won't be able to keep, unless that's your job, unless you're like an AI developer, is like a relations advocate or something, or some kind of AI advocate, that your job is to actually, your AI journalist, which is also a occupation that you can do. Unless you're like an AI journalist and your job is actually to follow all of these news and to make it into something that other people can digest. And there are actually really cool people online that do it for you. Unless you're that person, if you have a full-time job, if you have other life obligation, it is going to be really hard to keep up with everything. So a couple of approaches is pick one thing that you're interested in and try to follow up with that. Another approach is that one of my colleagues has been very successfully implementing is try to catch up as much as you can and then apply the delta. So just learn the delta, keep learning the delta, because these innovations are big, but at this point, actually the difference between them is minor. So like once you know the basics of whatever you're doing, now you're just figuring out what the difference is. What is the novelty? What is the new thing that happened? And finally, what is that you need to know to apply in your everyday job? So for me particularly, it really depends on a couple of things. One is like my personal passion and where I want to grow. The other one is what is the current project that I'm working on, and what are the innovations that I need to know for that particular project. So at the moment, my main focus would be a production-ready system. So how do we take all these great products that we have, and how can we now scale it to mass audiences? And think about, like however, 100,000 users, million users. And if you have, let's just as an example, take generative AI. So if we take any Gen AI technology, we need to solve problems. How do you generate content fast enough? How does content that is generated actually meets the criteria that you want to? Is the content actually factually correct? So you need to do all of this thing and now scale it to the mass audience. So how do we do that? Make it into something that actually has business value, that is actually, maybe profitable, or maybe has a marketing value, bringing some kind of value, or speeding up some kind of being efficiency tool, working on productivity within an organization. So how do we take all this innovative technology and how can we now apply it into this production ready system? And then we need to, in addition to all of that, think about some of the traditional computer science standards. So what is on a very basic level, what is the latency that we require? So do we require the system to be something like real time, close to real time, near real time? Or is this something that is happening somewhere in the background? What is the cost of running all of these applications? How can we minimize this and maximize the benefit that we're getting? So, some of these, how do we deploy these systems in a way that it makes sense? So how do we deploy something that, what if, a change happens in a back end and the model gets updated? How is that going to break our solution or not? How do we deal that? How do we figure that out? And in case that does happen, how do we put all of this together in an application that is actually beautiful and user-friendly? So all of these things are something that interests me personally. So this is where my focus is nowadays, is how do I figure that portion out? So I'm personally not focused on, I don't spend too much time. I try to keep up, but I don't spend a crazy amount of time on hardware. So that is something that I personally am not spending an insane amount of time. I'm trying to keep up a little bit here and there to just know, okay, the GPU innovation is there. This is how we're optimizing training, but I'm not training large language models. That's not my job. So that's not necessarily my focus. If your focus is, and you're really interested in how do we actually train large language model from scratch, maybe you want to dive deep into and keep up with innovation in GPU and hardware space. So there's so many things that exist nowadays that you could be staying in touch with, that you can follow, but it's really impossible to do it all. So focus on one thing, catch up with that, and then just figure out the delta.
So I want to come into it just because I actually come at it from a different perspective, because my role at Udacity requires me and requires our content team, to really look broadly at industries and trends. And so it is a constant job. It does not turn off. We are not 9 to 5 because we're constantly thinking about what's that next thing. And so, what you said, Milica, is true. This is a space that transforms so quickly on the tip of a dime, that how do you keep up with that? So I rely on those AI experts out there, those AI journalists. I rely on conferences. I do conferences like nobody's business, especially because they're virtual. And I live in Michigan. I live in a small town of 7,000 people. So it's not like I'm in a big city, folks. I'm pretty far away from those city centers, but virtual conferences are amazing because they're talking about whatever is that latest technology. Developer conferences, even if you don't consider yourself a developer, they're great to go to and just watch, because again, you're learning the language, you're getting a feel for the ecosystem, and you can do it from the comfort of your iPhone, smartphone, whatever, wherever you are in the world. So that's something that I think is really important, because in order to upskill or reskill in this space, there's actually a time element to it. That's kind of the nature of the space, because things change so quickly. You don't really have the luxury of sitting and saying, oh, okay, well, I'll do this one thing and I'll focus on it for 2 years before I jump into. You don't have that, because in 6 months, it'll be completely different. So at least in some kind of fundamental ways. So, again, I do conferences, I recommend conferences, podcasts. If you've got a really busy life, like many of us do, we all have to work or have our student life or have whatever's happening around us, podcasts are great. I mentioned that I started out with a real interest in data science, and I had the opportunity to link up with women in data science, and they have a podcast. It's great. I learned all sorts of stuff that I didn't even think about that are related to AI, right? Because AI is coming out of that data science. So again, you're learning that context, you're learning that lingo real time. And just like getting involved, it takes a lot of effort sometimes, but getting involved, like I will drive 2, 3 hours. I'll go to Chicago, I'll go to Detroit, just so that I can be in the room with the people who like read this stuff every day, and I can be learning directly from that expert. Not everybody can do that. But again, I can do that in person, but I can also do it virtually online. There's opportunities everywhere. And I particularly want to call out Google because Google does a really excellent job with this, in that they've got very active developer groups that you can learn from, that you can reach out to, who are there to support your learning journey. And they're not just there to like talk to the person who already knows what this is. They want you to reach out to them. They want you to be part of that community, and they want it to grow. There are so many, again, free online resources. I know, again, at Udacity, we have a lot of content that is available for people to, again, you gotta like ramp up that curiosity, and you gotta step forward, because you just don't have that opportunity to kind of sit and be like, oh, well, I'll wait. And the fact that you're here in this webinar right now is a testament to the fact that like you're already gearing yourself up for that next step.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you both. Karen, I'm curious, as a quick follow-up, you had mentioned the Women in Data Science podcast. Do you have any other resources to share with folks, whether they be influencers, hubs, podcasts?
Yeah, so I love women in data science, data skeptic, practical AI. There's like, I think, darknet diaries, because sometimes it's like it's great to hear all the like practical tips, but it's also quite interesting to me to like see what goes wrong, and like what people are doing wrong out here with technology, with AI, because it's kind of, I learn from that, right? I have these like, oh my goodness, somebody did that? And then it makes me curious. And so I go and I delve into that space. Because, at the same time, we're talking about something like you want to make it fun. It's not just a chore. You're going to be more into it. You're going to learn it if you're like making it fun. And I think that for me, again, I come back to these like communities that I'm part of. Detroit here in Michigan has become a tech hub, and there's a lot happening there. And so I use those events as like ways to learn and to meet and to network and to reach out, to find out, like I go to one event, somebody tells me about another event. I'm like, oh, I want to go to that. And it's really like this organic process. And I think that one of the things that you want to do as you're moving forward in your journeys with your AI careers is that you want to try to make that as organic as possible wherever you are. And I will tell you, when I first started on this journey, I actually I took a Udacity class, and they made me get a LinkedIn, and I was like, oh, LinkedIn, I don't even know what that is, but I got my LinkedIn. I put it together, I got it. And when I got it, I saw a group that was like, oh, all these data scientists from like everywhere. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm just gonna like ask if I can be part of this group. I started being part of the group. They started having all these conversations. They were talking AI, they were talking other like AI adjacent, data science adjacent fields. They were talking machine learning, and there were people like from everywhere in the world. And that to me was a huge thing, because it's like, wait a minute, you have networks available to you right here in so many different ways. And like that's again showing how hungry and how curious you are, because that's what you need. That's, again, if we go back to those very initial questions, like what are some of the skills that you need in this space? You need that hunger, and you need that curiosity, and then you need to start moving on it.
Love that. Yeah. Thank you, Karen. All right. So that's actually it for me. Now I'm excited. We're going to shift gears, have a lot of Q&A questions from the audience here. So let me pull up some of those now. Milica, this one I'll send your way. A member of the audience asks, I've seen a lot of AI roles will require several years of experience. For those already integrating Gen AI into side projects, but may not have that formal experience, how can I ensure these efforts don't go unnoticed and attract the attention of companies looking for AI capable talent?
Yeah, don't don't let that stop you apply for a role only because it says several years of experience. And there are various, I'm not an HR expert by any means, but I do think that sometimes that is kind of like a maybe ideal, but that doesn't mean that you won't be a good fit for that role only because you don't have years of experience. And what I previously said is, can you leverage your actual previous experience for the job that you're applying? So the I started working in the ML space, I don't know how many years ago, but before that, I had about 5 years of experience in educational publishing. And even though it was not anything like data science, I still was able to leverage that in a sense. Hey, like I worked in education, so if there's a position where I need to again, talk in a non-technical way, present something, teach something, educate audience. I use those skills in a sense like, hey, like I'm able to now work with these non-technical stakeholders, be able to explain concepts in a different way that maybe someone without that experience would not able to do. So kind of like use the experience. Only because you did not work directly in the industry, that doesn't mean that your previous experience is not relevant to what you're doing. In terms of how to promote projects, um, personally, I am not the best advisor on it. I'm not utilizing my social media as well, but there's so many people who do it, and I think that is a self-branding tool that is available to you, and it's free of charge. So essentially, figure out how to promote yourself and brand yourself, build your brand, and build your influence in a way that makes sense for you for whatever you want to do. So let's say that your end goal is to be a ML engineer in a startup space. Let's say that is kind of like the end goal. So the way you would want to build your brand, your social media presence is around that. And there's so many examples out there of people who have successfully done this without formal education or without years and years of experience, who have been hired by some very large organizations just because they had a very good online presence and very good brand. So building your brand is important. Another thing that I would say is reach out to people directly. I actually, even when I'm not maybe actively in a job market or anything like that, I tend to reach out to 2 to 4 people every week, and I literally send them cold messages on LinkedIn, and reach out like, hey, this is who I am. I love what you're doing, XYZ. This is how I'm following you, and I would love to connect. And I would love if you have like time to chat. If you're applying for jobs, I in the past have gotten several interviews just from cold messages on LinkedIn. I would have like a very short, maybe like a 3-sentence thing, and be like, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. Here's the job. What do I do next? And I successfully landed several interviews before just from doing that. So there are many ways to do it beyond just traditional applying for a job and being like, oh, shoot, how do I put this in my resume? Or how do I make up experience that I don't have? You shouldn't. There's so many ways that you can leverage things that you do have right in front of you.
Yeah, I love that. Talk about yourself. Pump yourself up. I love that. I mean, at this point, your resume is almost, it's important. It's not as important as sometimes your LinkedIn profile. Because I know that when we're looking at people, we always go to their LinkedIn profile and we see who they are and we check them out. So start using that resource. That is like so important. And that kind of like branding of yourself is not even just for like, well, your side hustles, your side projects. It's for everything. It's for your career. You need to learn how to brand yourself. You need to learn how to be an advocate for yourself and actively reach out, because especially if you're doing any kind of transitioning into this space, that's how you need to meet people. So yeah, totally on board with what you just said.
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you both. We have some other questions. Karen, we've seen a few questions come in around the importance of degrees. What's essential for working in AI, in your opinion? A bachelor's of science, master's, PhD? And as a quick follow-up, does a certification make a difference in the space in your experience?
Yeah. So, okay, let me preface this by saying I love education. I am always enrolled in some program just because I love learning. Okay, I love learning. And there are some things that you need to do for certain roles that require very formalized learning. If you want to be like a full-on senior data scientist, if you don't really have like I don't know, at some organizations, if you don't have a PhD, they're not even going to look at you. And it doesn't even matter. Like it doesn't, that's not necessarily a PhD at in data science. It could be a PhD in statistics, a PhD in physics. That is one element of the world out there. But I think that's a small element and it's becoming smaller. Why? Because things are changing. What you're learning in school is old by the nature of the fact that like you're in school. A professor's teaching you what they learned whenever they learned it. There are some conceptual things that will stand the test of time, and those conceptual things may not change. But like if we're talking about application here, going to school for that is just it's old. And I'm not saying, you know, I never want to dissuade people from going to school because I've got kids, they all went to college and all this is good stuff, and so did I. But at the end of the day, I'm not working at Udacity doing what I do and doing it well because of those specific degrees. It's because I decided I was passionate about a specific space. And I think that it's not just for me, it's for everybody. You get passionate about a space, you delve, and then you start to learn. You are very fortunate. We are all very fortunate to be at a point in the world where AI is here. And because it is so rapid, everybody's catching up. Everybody's catching up. And so if you're catching up and you got to get this skill, the best way to get this skill is through like specific programming. That's how you start to build that experience that we talked about earlier with Milica. Like, you know, I have this side project. How do I get from the side project? You start to build the skills. You start to do the thing. And a lot of programs like Udacity enable you to do that. We're not just teaching you the skill. In fact, like my job is not to just teach you the application. I need to teach you the conceptual so you know, so you can be in the room with others and have this conversation and be educated on that point. But that doesn't require that. Now, with certifications are great because it shows that you've put in the effort to do the work, to take the exam. But those exams for certifications, depending on what the certification is, you need to back that up with what you're doing also on that implementation. So if you have a certification, for example, like kind of one more of the fluency types of certifications, that's excellent because it's saying, oh no, I've studied this recently. I've gotten this expertise. I've gotten it quickly so I can ramp up and I can prove to you that I've done this. That's super important. And there are a lot of employers who, let's say you have your LinkedIn, they look to see what your certifications are. Like I have certifications. I like certifications because again, I like learning and I like proving that I've learned something. So that's important. That's important to me. And it's important for me to show other people. But in addition to proving that certification, I also want to layer in application with that. So just remember that like, as you are looking at programs, you know, maybe you still want to go get that degree and that's fine. But I think that as an interim step to get you further along this career trajectory, you need to do the things that are going to get you there faster and going to get you there with the current material.
Love that. Thank you, Karen. Milica, this question is for you. What excites you most about what AI holds for the future?
Whew. uh, I think that the biggest thing that I am looking forward to is finding new ways to connect all of this awesome tech that we are building with real world applications that actually make sense. So I think that there are lots of ideas out there, but really finding what makes sense and approaching the building AI solutions the way we would think about traditionally, like business in general. I think that that is the coolest part of the space, personally. So how do we take all of this awesome things that we're now building and improve the world that we live in, and build some really amazing stuff that are going to make, just things easier, better, more efficient. How can we use this technology to advance everything and anything? How can we use it in a space where, to provide opportunities where maybe there are not opportunities for everyone? Maybe we're using this technology to create real world applications, to design, build real world applications that are going to solve all kinds of cool problems that are at the moment either not being solved or being very slow, solved very slowly. The process slow. The process is super expensive because it's slower, because it requires all kinds of technical knowledge, or people who are trained with very specific training. So maybe there are not enough people who do it, or it's very difficult to do it. Maybe you need a lot of precision to do certain tasks. So I think that that's the coolest part of this. What can we use the AI for to solve all of these real world applications that are hard to solve right now without that technology?
Love that. Karen, do you have something? We're almost at time, but do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'm excited because I feel like AI is a great equalizer in so many ways. And I just want to leave with the story. So, I have a sister who has dyslexia. And she's an adult, she's a professional, but she has always struggled to both read and then write, especially when it came to emails. And I was telling her about AI, I wanted to get her excited. And I was like, look, you know what? She told me she was like just struggling to write an email. And I said, you know what? Why don't we use there's this new thing called GPT that was like last year. And I was like, let's use it to write your email. And we did that. And she was like, oh my goodness, amazed. And for her, it was such a light bulb moment that she then turned around, driven by her own curiosity of what more she could do, became like this prompting like master, now has applications that she's running via her own company based on like the seed of me saying, hey, why don't you check this out? This is what some AI can do for you. So what's exciting for me is that like this is an opportunity for everyone. If you have a phone that's got internet connectivity, this is an opportunity for you. If you have wherever you are, whatever your degree is, not is, wherever you live, again, I'm excited to see what people are creating, and I'm excited to be like a catalyst in that change because of the programs like myself and other members of my team are building, and our partners like Google are building. Like, this is exciting. So to me, it's like, what are you going to build, right? What are you going to come up with? What is a problem that you're seeing in your life, in your community, in your world? And you're like, hey, why couldn't we do this? And then you're going to be the person to do that. Coming back to what Milica said, it's like, this is so grassroots to me, and it's the grassroots piece of it. It's I love the enterprise piece of it and the org piece of it. That's great. but there's also this real swelling of like grassroots. What are you going to build and make into the next Google or Udacity?
Yeah, thank you for that beautiful story. And yeah, I think that's a great place to wrap up. We are at time. That hour went by fast. Milica, Karen, thanks so much for your time and insights today. And a big thanks to everyone who joined through Zoom, LinkedIn, YouTube. If you're interested in learning more about the foundational cloud skills that'll set you up for success in this AI era that we're in, be sure and check out Google's Cloud Digital Leader Learning Path, as both Milica and Karen mentioned earlier, which is offered for free on Udacity. Thanks for making us a part of your day, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Amazing. Thank you all.